Hi, let's talk about something different this time. How do we, or how do people, end up summoning incubus and succubus? Not just to make sure, I'm not going to talk about how to solve the issues, how to deal with them, and everything else, or the big ass story, but mainly, how do we get them? And then again, if you have gotten them yourself, if you know anyone that has them, feel free to share what you know, what you saw, what you experienced, or heard others, experience, and all that stuff. And why do you think it happens in the first place? So that being said, one of the things I need to tell, sorry about my language, but they're all around us, entities and beings. And when people have incubus and succubus showing up, it doesn't mean that, like, how did this weird entity all of a sudden manifested in my room and actually fucked me? How did that happen? Well, the thing is, they're all around us. Entities, beings, they're everywhere and they're here all the time. They don't need to manifest because they're already here. And basically, most people just don't see them. We are not tuned in to the higher frequencies to access better visuals. Let's say your dog, your cat, your pet inside the house might actually sense them. They might feel the energy shift and everything. They might see them, but most people don't actually have this ability. You do have the ability, everyone does, but it's suppressed. And you can actually work on that to open up your visuals to make sure. So that being said, these beings are around us. They don't need to manifest because they're already here and we just don't see them. So one of the first ways, and kind of like, I don't know, disappointing, sad, but people end up getting incubus and succubus because they summon them themselves. The usual scenario is there's going to be a horny person at the night or sometime of the day when they're like, oh, I want to please myself. And I actually would like someone to do it for me. But didn't really have anyone around them. Their girlfriend, the boyfriend is not there. So they look up YouTube videos or they go on Google or some other search engine. They look up, how do I get incubus and succubus to have fun? And then, they play around. It's not for the better, but they manage to summon incubus and succubus and they get messed with. Cool. First few times might be fun. They had sex. They're like, oh, fuck, yeah, it worked. Cool. But then it's out of their control. They are not in control anymore and they're being messed with by these beings and they get drained and everything else. So that's what happens. Another reason why it happens to people is because of their fantasies and kinks. Let's say again, you might have a lover or a friend or not, doesn't matter, but everyone can think about sex any time of the day and enjoy it. Or we can spend some wild fantasies and kinks just to please ourselves, and it's all up to your privacy of what you think about. And it's good, it's okay, no worries, it's your life. But people, spin stories just to please themselves, just to like, hey, this is gonna be fun. And hey, in this massive multiverse, everything happens. Everything you have ever thought of, every fantasy, every kink is already out there and happening massively, just so you know. So you're not wrong or guilty for doing that. But at the same time, most people are either not protecting themselves or in a way, it's like opening the door and inviting or allowing the vampire or a bad being to come inside your home. And most people just create this body, just create this being, and they're like, okay, this is kind of fun. And you just spin the story in your head. You might visualize it. You might just like think about it and it's all cool. And then all of a sudden, some beings can like, okay, this is a great body because everything you think of and imagine, you're actually creating. So you subconsciously or unknowingly create all these realms where you actually have a body out there and you look exactly how you looked. And now you have all these people you've created and they're having fun with you. And it doesn't end there. It's like you are the overself, the higher self right now who created a little part of yourself. And the same way people over here are like, why me? Why am I experiencing all this crap? Why does my overself leave me? It's the same way we can just spin a story to have fun and leave an aspect of ourselves to be messed with by the other beings. And so consciousness can take any body possible, but at the same time, anybody is open for entities and any kind of beings that want to take the body. So all of a sudden, we have a lot of entities jumping into our created bodies, and they're there. And aspects of ourselves are still connected to us. And in a way, fantasies and kinks eventually lead to the voodoo doll effect. So we get the consequences. So there's that. Another thing, which is kind of funny, but not really, is people catch cooties. You might walk around the street, you might be with someone else, you might just look at them and, you have a conversation online like you're talking to me right now. And let's say that person isn't really clear. They have succubus and entities, and incubus and all this stuff. And after the conversation, they're really, horny and all this stuff, and they have intentions towards you. And their incubus, succubus will jump from them to you because they don't really need to travel and really fly or anything. They can teleport, and intention and imagination is enough for them to just, oops, there you go. So we can catch cooties, and by that we can catch entities, succubus, incubus, and just, kind of fucked up meeting or talking to certain people. And at the same time, it goes sort of to same category. People in your household, if you're kind of like, why didn't do anything like Phil mentioned from the list yet, but why am I getting the experience? Someone in our household might have, hots, kinks, they not necessarily try to summon anything, but they're kind of open. And in a way, people around in your space can have incubus or succubus, and they can mess with them, and they can come and mess with us. Now, another thing which is causing a lot of damage is broken energy shield. Usually people don't take care of their diet. People are getting triggered, people are getting messed with, and eventually this energy shield that is supposed to protect us, if we somehow fuck it up, then we have holes, or sometimes, it just falls apart completely, and this energy shield is not saving us anymore. And now we're completely open to any harm and damage, and people, entities, incubus, succubus, they can just jump on us and mess with us. At the same time, these beings can open up portals in our space. So where it is outside of your energy bubble or within, if it has holes, they can open up a portal. And while you might not see it, they have access. It's like opening the door and coming at your place anytime they want. And again, didn't necessarily need to wait for the nighttime to come over. You can actually just be sitting around still, and you'll feel someone touching you and feeling you up and shoving things up your ass. But it's easy for me and kind of like making it jokingly, but it happens to a lot of people. A lot of people are actually being messed with pretty harsh. And, it's funny when I say it because I'm not experiencing it right now, but hell, some people are really suffering from this stuff. So again, some people smoke too much, some people use weird drugs or pills, and they just sit on this stuff. They get burned out, and now they get friends over here. So thanks. Another thing is we have fragments of us and others. Basically, some people go to soul traps. Some people just have like, okay, we have this high sexual part that's really horny or turned on, and like, we live. And sometimes we're like, we get together with a person and we can't be ourselves anymore. We can't be that really horny person, really into sexual stuff. And like, I kind of have to cut that part of myself off to fit in and make this thing work. Or, like other beings might have an aspect where they're really into that stuff. So there's part of us that we cut off. The fragment of, into sexuality and everything else is actually, can be just hanging around in your space. It's like still waiting for you to sort of like, maybe you'll accept me. Like, do I have to go really far? I'm just going to follow you around because that's where I've been. That's my home. And so a fragment of you is constantly around and is basically open to attracting any kind of trouble, like incubus, succubus, entities, and other weird beings that would like to have fun with them. Same with, there's a part of us that can attract them, and there's a part of entities. So let's say fragments of our beings, if people have gone through like a soul trap and everything else, merging with our beings, getting their crap, like you get a soul trap, you merge with plenty of beings and their traumas and their things and their kinks and everything else, and you come out like as part of like a massive mess. And then somewhere in it all, there's part of like their beingness that has been into, and like, let's say kinks and fantasies and everything else and sexual stuff, and is now, let's say, while you might not think about it, the part of them is still with you, and they will be attracting the being. So we might get from that. And then again, the entities in our space, some thought forms, some feeling states, either they're put there against their own free will, and they're pretty much like there to just attract beings, like incubus, succubus in your space to mess with you, or, like we actually attract them somehow. So there's that. Another thing, somewhat connected to it all, is being targeted. Yes, you're a targeted individual. And some people or some beings out there might know, like, hey, well, if this person hardly ever gets triggered, if our pushbacks and little buttons and everything we do to mess with the person doesn't get them to react, we can't get any loot from them, the best way would be to attack them sexually. All of a sudden we have, let's say, it's so easy for other beings, specifically reptiles. I've seen a lot of reptiles having a direct connection to the incubus succubus world. And yes, incubus and succubus beings have their own realities, have their own realms, have their own worlds. So the same way we have Earth, just imagine all that, but it's all incubus and succubus. Ooh, the views you can see out there are nasty and kinky, but it's out there. So, some beings might not like you. You might piss someone off, and all of a sudden you get a little portal opening up in your space, and these beings will come over and start messing with you.
So the most common types of succubi that I'm noting here as an example is one, the easiest one to identify, we've already spoken about, is the sexual siren seduction type, female or male. This type of succubus will be very attractive, possibly erotic, alluring, what have you. It could be anywhere from, down and dirty, nitty-gritty porn star to just cute little next door type, or the handsome debonair man, walking down the street, what have you. There's a sexual element to it, and their specific type of siphoning is sexual, which makes it more obvious, right? The next type of succubus that I'm going to use as an example is going to be a money drain. So my example here is, do you have a partner, or are you a partner that is constantly draining your partner's money, or you're being drained of money? There's always more going out the door. It's never enough, no matter what is given or received. Money keeps going out the door. Your partner is never fully satisfied with what they have. They always want more. But at the same time, you're seduced by this. Maybe you want to please your partner. Hopefully you do want to please your partner. And they also give back because it is a give and take, but you've definitely noticed the cycle. That one is less obvious than the sexual succubus, but more obvious than the business siphon. So a business succubus is going to siphon your time. They are going to siphon your sweat equity. They are going to steal your ideas and claim them as their own, all the while being suave enough to seem on the up and up with you and stay friends with you, while continuing to take and get you to do more than you're currently earning. This could be a coworker, it could also be a boss. Now, that allure is going to be a bit different with business, right? The allure might be you're going to earn more money, or you're hoping to get a raise, or a job title boost, or just please your boss, what have you. And in my opinion, the most difficult type of succubus to spot is the psychic drain. This type of succubus is going to siphon your psychic energy, your emotional energy, your loosh. And this could be anyone in your vicinity or field. All they have to do is get access to you. Now, how do we recognize and spot these succubus? There is absolutely a cycle that will play out. So the first that's going to happen is the trap. You become the bait. This will be set through seduction or allure. right? It could be as obvious as, being sexualized. Maybe you're going to a strip club, or you're watching porn, or you're having a one-night stand. That type of lure, it's really obvious. It's sexual, it's sensual, it's erotic, it's passionate, what have you, okay? If it's business, it's going to be performing at the job, making the money, impressing your boss, staying on, a good rapport with your coworkers. If it's your partner, it could also be sexual. It might just be pleasing your partner. It could be the emotional tie, the engagement. It could be, trauma bonding, what have you. And if it's a psychic siphon, it's often going to be that you two connect in some way where you enjoy this camaraderie, you enjoy the engagement, or they are offering you assistance or support in some way, just as you're offering them assistance and support. There's always some kind of interaction in that regard. There will always be FaceTime, but you can still pick up a succubus through media, through digital, through virtual, okay? So, but you're still offering FaceTime through those devices, right? Now, the seduction engagement bait trap has happened, okay? It's like the Venus flytrap puts out the pheromones that attracts the insects, and then it snaps shut. Now, while you're in the trap, you're most likely going to enjoy it because there's some kind of enticing engagement happening. There needs to be some kind of either very obvious experience of euphoria as sex during intercourse, or some kind of camaraderie, banter back and forth that is going to keep you diverted long enough so that the succubus can insert the proboscis or the tentacle, which they utilize to siphon. Now, a proboscis is what a mosquito has to insert the needle in to siphon the blood. Same difference. In my clairvoyant view, I've only ever seen these two types of insertions utilized by succubi, though it does not mean by any means there aren't other types. It's just what I've seen, okay? And I've also seen the most common area or zone to insert these tentacles or proboscis is going to be in the back body. Think any orifice, any open hole, and this includes chakras, okay? Back body is most often utilized because this type of entity is attacking through a sneak attack. So they're going to go at your back where you literally can't see as easily. If it's sexual, think of your sexual zones. It's going to be up the sphincter muscles. It's going to be, in the sexual zones, all orifices, all open holes. I've seen it in all of those zones. I've seen insertion in the mouth. I've seen it in between the shoulder blades. I've seen it eyes, ears, crown, what have you. So the insertion is made and you haven't really noticed it because you're subdued through the engagement. You're having some kind of either obvious euphoric engagement or simply camaraderie, enjoyment. There's some kind of intoxication because there is a seduction and subduing with the intoxicant, the pheromones released to engage you in the first place. And then further, when the proboscis is inserted, it is like an energetic venom or intoxicant, then gives you a further numbing and euphoria so the prey doesn't feel the take. It doesn't feel the siphon, okay? Now, once this has all passed and everything is played out, there is always going to be a drain. There's going to be a fogginess, a cloudiness. Maybe you're confused, maybe you're baffled. It depends on the situation. It might be immediate if you're sensitive. It could be the next day. It could be hours later. If you had an engagement of a sexual succubus while being under the influence of alcohol or drugs, you might not notice this type of fogginess because of your hangover. So the chemicals can cover or mask this, but you're still going to be feeling some kind of a fogginess, a confusion, bottoming out in some form. Now, most of the time, the succubus will not remove the proboscis unless it has to, right? So that means that you're still under the control and vulnerable to the succubus's will. And because there is a proboscis or tentacle still inserted, they will engage or trigger a new cycle. They will do something that gets you to re-engage with them. This could be a lustful thought if it's the sexual piece, imagery. It could be, a promotional, it could be the money, it could be with your partner wanting to connect. It could be also just that because this person or the succubus is placed into your normal daily or weekly routine, that you see them again, that's when the cycle re-ups. And then this entire cycle will start all over again, which will quite quickly create an addiction user-taker type cycle that will keep happening.
Okay, so yes, I was astral projecting for a number of years at this stage of the game. And, as a kid, flying around, looking for someone to play with, or just flying around, it was entertaining, and you could go to different places. I like to go to the mountains sometimes and fly around there. But, as I got older and certainly got into my teen years, I started getting other interests and being interested in the opposite sex for someone like myself. Well, I mean, it's not unheard of, certainly, and it happens all the time. So obviously I had this interest. And as I was projecting, I guess I was throwing out a lot of this sexual energy out there. It must have been leaking out all over the place. So one night, as I was beginning to leave my body, I found this very attractive female who, I guess she'd been in a hurry to come visit me because she'd forgotten to get dressed. So this female is, she looked to be around 25, let's say, which to me was a grown woman. And she was extraordinarily attractive to me. And she hovered above me and looked down at me with very tempting type eyes. But then she laid eyes on this Bible that I had next to my bed. And now I wasn't a Bible thumper. I was, at that age, you get confirmed in the Lutheran Church. And I was going through confirmation procedures, and one of the tests was you had to memorize all the books of the Bible, and you had to read certain passages. So I had the Bible next to my bed. And she took one look at it, and she kind of hissed and shied away and said that I have to get rid of that. And if I do, then she will visit me again tomorrow night. Then she left. Now, I kind of reintegrated with my body at that point in time, and my mind was telling me, this is not a good thing that just happened. But there was other parts of me that were, well, let's just say very captivated with what I had just experienced. So, against perhaps my better judgment, I took the Bible and put it in another room and eagerly awaited the next night. So, like clockwork, she showed up again the next night. And she was pleased that there was no Bible there. And once again, she was wearing nothing but an eager smile. She asked me if she could stay, and she asked me whether I could be hers. And I took one look at her and I said, oh, yes, definitely. And then she said, excellent, we have a pact. At that point in time, she Well, she gave me an experience that I had never imagined at 13 would be possible. She had talents that were unearthly. Let me put it to you that way, because we want to keep this very clean for YouTube. When we were done, I felt very tired. And she told me that I was very special, that as an astral projector, I was, quote, a prize for her. Not quite sure what I was supposed to make of that. I thought it was a very odd word, but okay, whatever. I was still in the afterglow. And I asked her name, and she said, we don't really have names like you humans do, but you can call me Lilith if you like. And so I said, okay, fine. That's what I will call you. And I asked her, will I see you again? And she said, oh, yes, you are mine. And then she disappeared. Well, Lilith visited me nightly, every night for the next few weeks. And sometimes I would be in my body when she was caressing me. Other times I would leave my body, and then we would have this merging type experience that was fantastically pleasurable. But I couldn't read her like I could humans, because I had done it once before with a human, but I couldn't read her. All I could read was coldness, I guess is the best way I could explain it. But the overwhelming sensations was just, I think, too much for a 13-year-old boy to handle. So this went on for several weeks, and I was getting more and more tired. I was always good in school, but I was kind of drifting off in school. I'd gotten in trouble once or twice for falling asleep. I just felt tired and weak, and I didn't understand why. I mean, I was eating like I always do, but I was just getting weaker and weaker. And then one night she came, and after we were done, she asked if she could bring her sister. Well, I thought, okay, the more the merrier. After all, these are the stories that they talk about in Playboy magazine, right? So that next night, yes, she brought another sister with her, and they both, I guess you could say, worked on me. It was quite the experience. But then that next morning, I was just so tired that my mother said I looked like death warmed over. I remember that was her exact expression. So she told me I was staying home because she thought I was sick. And so I just stayed in bed and had ginger ale and toast and I think some chicken noodle soup. That night, Lilith showed up again with her sister in tow. But I said, look, I need some time off. I'm just too tired. I need to sleep. This is just taking too much out of me. She looked disappointed, and I saw a tinge of anger in her eyes. But she said, I will give you 3 days if you agree that on the 4th day you will visit my home with me. I agreed. I would have agreed to anything at that point in time just to get a few nights rest. That's just how depleted I was feeling. And I felt that I must be sick in some way, and that if I could just get some rest, that I could be rejuvenated. So with that, she disappeared. Now I started getting a little suspicious here. I wasn't Yes, I was a 13-year-old hormonally charged youth, but I wasn't a complete idiot. And I did have some experience, obviously, on the astral plane. I started figuring, this sounds too good to be true. So let me do some checking. So I went to my local library again, trying to figure out what to ask for. So I went up to my local librarian, who was about 1,000 years old, and asked if she had any information on female demons. She looked at me strangely, as she always did, because I was always asking for things like that, or astral projection, or the occult, or communicating with spirits. So she just took it in stride and showed me to a particular book that actually went back to incidences in the Middle Ages. Apparently, for well over 1,000 years of recorded history, and probably a lot further back than that, there were tales of the succubus, which was a demon in female form that would appear in your dreams to seduce men, usually through sexual activity. Now, it was the next part that really got my attention, though. And it said that according to religious traditions, repeated interaction with a succubus can cause poor physical or mental health and even death. Now that woke me up, because that's how I was feeling. I was feeling drained physically and mentally. I could hardly think. I could hardly get out of bed. I was falling asleep in class when I went to school, and I knew this had to stop. And at least now I had some information to go on. So when the fourth night happened and she showed up alone, and she told me it's time to go. Well, I refused. But she said, we had a pact, and you must come with me. And with that, I was violently torn from my body and whisked away. Now, I lost consciousness. And when I regained it, I was underground in some huge cavern. Now, the ceiling was filled with stalactites, but the rest of the chamber, at least as what I could see of it, because it seemed to go on and on and on and on, but the light got dimmer and dimmer, so I couldn't see further along. But it looked like what in my mind would be a sultan's harem room, where all the women would be reclining on big plush pillows and sedan chairs and lounges and what have you. And all of these women were either sky-clad, as I believe the Wiccans call it, or were very, very lightly clothed. And they were all different, but they were all extraordinarily attractive. When we arrived, we were rushed by hundreds of these women, all asking what gift Lilith had brought them. She told them my name, which I knew was a bad thing, and she said that I was an astral projector. And they all oohed and awed and said, "Ooh, what a prize you have snared. We are jealous." Once again, there's that word prize again, and I did not like the word snared. Now, I'm not going to lie to you and say that I wasn't at all moved by these attractive femme fatales. But I didn't like being treated like I was some winning hound in a dog show. And I was more than a little disconcerted by the hungry looks I was getting. I thought I knew now how a deer felt when surrounded by starving wolves. A plan suddenly came to me, and I said, I have completed our pact. I am returning to my body now. And with that, I started fading away. But the last thing I heard was, you are still mine, before I faded back and returned to my body. Well, I prepared myself for what I knew was coming the next night. And I'd done more research in the meantime, and I felt I was prepared. So when she arrived, she said, that was very rude what you did last night. You are one of the first of living men to visit our plane. However, I'm prepared to forgive you. And then she stopped because she abruptly noticed that I had the Bible at the foot of my bed. And she reacted like a scalded cat and shrieked and moved away. She then screamed, what is that effing thing doing here in our bedroom? Well, I summoned all my 13-year-old courage and replied, it is not our bedroom, it is my bedroom. And in the name of Jesus Christ, I revoke my invitation to you. I withdraw from any pacts as well. Depart immediately and never return. Well, a look of pure hate and frustration came over her face. I could tell she was fighting to stay with all of her will, but she was losing the battle. But as she faded away, she said, and I'll remember it to my dying day, you will always be mine. Well, that's the end of that little story and experience of 13-year-old Rick with that succubus creature. And that affected me powerfully, and I think it made me a little bit more serious about what I was doing on the astral plane, and that I had to be a lot more careful than perhaps I had been in the past.